You're listening to the My Ministry Mission podcast, where faith's transformative power comes to life. Check out the show notes for links to my website, how to support the show or become a guest, and where to find me on social media, plus much more. God has placed a calling of ministry in my heart, and I'm answering that call. From Genesis to Revelation, this podcast aims to take you on an extraordinary journey of faith. Get ready as we prepare to dive into another episode. My name is Jason, and this is my mission. If you're like me and you like listening to the Bible, I definitely recommend the Dwell app. Dwell lets you listen to Scripture in a way that best fits you. Explore Scripture through playlists, stories, passages, and themed reading plans. Choose from 10 genuine voices, customize your background music, and get original music by renowned composer Chad Lawson. According to the Joyful Life magazine, Dwell is a unique new audio Bible app that will make your time listening to God's Word enriching and life-changing. Ditch your boring old Bible app and make getting into God's Word a whole new experience. Check out Dwell today and tell them I sent you by going to myministrymission.com/go/dwell. That's myministrymission.com/go/DWELL, or click the link in the show notes. If you're ready to enjoy a whole new level of Bible study, it's time for Dwell. Go to myministrymission.com/go/dwell today and check it out. Welcome and thank you for joining me. My name is Jason and I'm your host. Do you believe in miracles? If you're a Christ follower, I sure hope so. In this episode, I have the honor of speaking to Paul Joel, a board-certified doctor in internal medicine and pulmonary. He wrote the book, A Man Like You and Me, A Supernatural Story, which is about supernatural events that started in 1982 and continue on to this day. He is also the recipient of one of God's miracles. Are you intrigued? Keep listening as we dive into this amazing journey, and then head over to pauljoelbook.com. That's pauljoelbook.com, or just find the link in the show notes and get a copy for yourself. So welcome, Paul. Thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you for having me as a guest.
Absolutely. I am so grateful for your time. The most precious thing anybody can give me is their time. So it does sound like you've had a very exciting life and you've got an exciting book and you have quite the story to tell. So I'm excited to hear more about it.
Okay, well, I probably should start off with my parents' experience. They were Polish Jews during World War II. And everybody in my family, except for my parents, was murdered by the Nazis.
Wow.
I never believed in God. I thought this idea of this all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving God was a complete myth, because where was he when all this was happening? Was he on vacation? He didn't see it. He didn't care about it. Like, he certainly didn't care about my family. And it was brutal. It wasn't just like somebody was sent to a concentration camp or just bad enough, or somebody was just lined up and shot. It was awful. My mother was 4 years old. She lived in a very large house because her parents were there. She also had a brother, and she also had 3 sisters who were married, and each of them had at least 3 or 4 kids. They were all living in this big house. And the Nazis came in. Again, she's 4 years old, and somehow she was in a corner someplace where she could hear and see everything, but they couldn't see her, fortunately.
That's terrible.
And they came in and they tied up everyone, okay? And then they killed the kids, the children, in front of everyone. Then they raped the women and then slit their throats. Then they killed the husbands, and finally they killed her parents. And then she ran and left and was living on the street eating garbage for a couple of weeks until a Ukrainian couple who had no children took her in, and she hid the fact that she was Jewish because they hated Jews. And that's where she, survived World War II. My father was much older than she was, okay? He has an interesting story, too. This is a picture of him in his Polish army uniform. And Poland kind of was overrun by the Nazis within a month. And he came home during that war one weekend, and he was married, had an infant son, and the Nazis murdered both of them. So then he deserted and ran for his life and kept this picture on him, okay, because he went towards Russia and he wanted to make sure that people didn't think he was a Nazi spy of some sort. So he had his picture in the Polish uniform. And he survived several winters, Russian winters, no shelter.
Wow.
No food, buy food, steal food, work a week, get some money, steal some money, whatever to survive, okay? And he had this great immune system that I inherited. And if he didn't have this great immune system, he would have been dead. At the end of the war, the Russians come through, Stalin's armies come through. They see him and they enlist him in the Russian army. Okay, so he started the war in the Polish army, deserted. Then he was in the Russian army for a couple of weeks or so and deserted from that army too. So I don't know what the record is for most armies deserted during the same war, but he deserted two of them. And then at the end of the war, so he met my mother. And he was obviously much older than my mother, okay? And the war started when she was 4. And my mother wanted to go get to the United States to get out of there. And she certainly couldn't go on a boat to the United States by herself. She's a minor. And I don't know if she ever really loved my father, but, this was her ticket. So she married him, and suddenly she was able to go on the boat and get to the United States. And I thank God I was born in 1949 after the war in the United States. Okay, I thank God every day that I'm an American. And then when I was 4, unfortunately, she decided to take me and divorce my father, which was a catastrophe for me because she never believed in God. She was really damaged goods, and you can't really criticize her because of what she went through. Okay,
right.
And my father did believe in God, so I would have had a shot. He was like a kind person who knew what love was. Okay, my mother really had no idea what that was about, and basically I was kind of ignored and abused. She married my stepfather, who was very nice, and he committed the cardinal crime of being very overweight. So my mother, that was like a cardinal sin. You have enough food, you don't have to eat more food than whatever. And so to make sure that he wasn't overeating at 2 o'clock in the morning, there was suddenly no food in the house. Okay, I'm 6, 7 years old, and there's no food. I'm starving to death. I'm really being raised starving to death. Okay, I have a disorder where I can't stand starving, and I was emaciated all my life. And then I had a sister, same mother, but with my stepfather. Okay, so we have the same mother but different fathers, and she was like 7.5 years younger than me. And I remember eating her baby food because that would be replaced. Otherwise, I'd starve to death. And I basically was this emaciated kid all my life. I played two-hand touch football on cement at the Glenwood Football League in high school, okay? And I was like 150 pounds, whatever, 6'1". And then afterwards, when I graduated from high school, I'm in college now, and I'm on my selective service card when I'm 18, I'm 6'1", 150 pounds. Okay, that's what's listed there. That's pretty thin. Eventually, I'm in college now, and I'm not interested in learning anything. Okay, I really wasted a lot of time there. I was on the chess team in high school, which I forgot about until last week or so. Again, I had this great memory, and I had this great immune system. That was the talents that I was given.
There's a component of your childhood I would like to talk about and to touch on that we talked about, because you said you grew up in Brooklyn. You had a pretty complicated childhood. You grew up basically being told that you were not smart enough, right?
I'm 3 years old, okay, and I'm not saying any words. I'm not speaking. And you're supposed to be able to say 2 words with the meaning by the age of 1, okay? And I don't have a pediatrician, and I'm never sick. I didn't get any of these immunizations you're supposed to get in the first 3 years, DPT, MMR, whatever it is, but somehow I'm not sick anyway, so whatever. And my parents were kind of clueless and, couldn't care. So eventually I would play with this playmate who was like 10 months older than me, and the mother of the playmate said, hey, maybe he needs to see a pediatrician, okay? He's not talking. This is not normal, okay? So, again, this is 72 years ago. I was seen by a female pediatrician who referred me to a male pediatric neurologist. And I remember the worried look on my parents' face, worried that I was retarded. And after examining me, he said, no, this is a direct quote from 72 years ago. This is the memory I'm used to, okay? No, he's not retarded. He's aware of his environment. He'll learn to talk. He's just slow. He's very slow. Like, basically, he's dumb as a box of rocks, but he's not retarded. That was the upshot of this thing, okay? What he failed to ask is anyone speaking English to this kid? And the answer to that is no. My parents are speaking to each other in Polish or Yiddish or Russian, okay? There's no TV for me to listen to English. There's no radio to listen to English. So how am I going to learn how to talk, okay? I mean, he didn't ask that question, but it was kind of like already put into my head that I'm a moron. And then because they worked multiple jobs, and they put me in this torture chamber called yeshiva, which was for Jewish boys at the time. Now I'm sure they have it for Jewish girls too. And you get there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and in the morning you learn how to read Hebrew, write Hebrew. You learn about the Old Testament, the history of the Jewish people, and there's a break for lunch. And then in the afternoon, somebody comes in and teaches you what you've learned in public school, reading, writing, arithmetic. but it's a long day from 8 in the morning till 5.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there and I'm very frustrated and I'm the dumbest kid in every subject. I'm getting D's in everything. And it's not like my parents are coming up to say, hey, well, what's going on with him? Because they already told he's an idiot. And then we moved to a different part of Brooklyn, and now it was worse because it was the same schedule, but now I had a bus ride for 6 miles and more walking to do to get there, but the same 8 in the morning till 5. And so new kids, new school, same result. I'm the dumbest kid in every subject. And this went on all through third grade also. And finally, at the end of third grade, Mr. Frank Tandler, who was the person who taught the public school part in the afternoon, said he needed to talk to me. And I was worried because I knew I wasn't getting some award for being dumb. And he said to me, look, I don't know what's going on with you, but when I call on you in class, you seem to have some idea what's happening. But when you take these tests, you are the worst student I've ever had in my entire career. Why don't you study for the tests? So I told him I don't get home till around 6, and I have Hebrew homework to do. And then I told him the story that I was dumb when I was 3, and why should I waste my time studying? I'm an idiot. And he's, he basically changed my life. And about 2 weeks later, he announced that there was a test, and in a loud voice embarrassed me and said, and you, I don't want to hear about your schedule. Okay, there's a test tomorrow. Study for the test. You understand English, or is English a second language for you? And most of the children in that class were like me. They were children of immigrants, and English was a second language for my parents. Okay, so anyway, so I got an A, and suddenly I started getting A's. Who knew? I was smart. And then to top it all off, all these teachers that I had in yeshiva had dark hair, and when I got the answer wrong, I get smacked with a ruler over my hand or forearm. So it was awful. And again, they all had dark hair. And now I was getting A's. And I heard there was this thing called SP, Special Progress in Public School. You take a test in 6th grade. If you do really well, you go from 7th grade to 9th grade. You skip 8th grade. And for me, having one less year of school was like winning the lottery. Like, what could possibly be better in life?
Right.
Okay? And also, public school was 9 to 3. So it was already a win. So I talked my way into public school. I'm on 5th grade in public school. And I have another teacher with dark hair, female. And of course, I remember her name, but we'll leave it out. And she hated all the boys and loved the girls. Okay, she didn't just hate me, all the boys she couldn't stand. And so I get the answer wrong. I'm 10 years old, I'm in 5th grade. And I get the answer wrong. She said, quote, listen, you have to stop thinking with your penis and start using your brain for a change.
Oh, no.
And I'm like mortified, okay? I'm 10 years old. The teacher's talking about my penis in class. And so finally I get into 6th grade, and I have Miss Hammer. And for the first time, I have a blonde as a teacher. And nobody's hitting me. Nobody's embarrassing me, okay? I took the test for SP, made it. And I think in the back of my mind, I've already pre-programmed that blonde is wholesome, blonde is good, okay? And then, of course, fast forward, I have this great memory. I was an intern and resident at Kings County Hospital where they had this genius, Dr. Howard Lyons, in charge of pulmonary, in charge of lung disease. And he had a couple of mottos. His most important one is, if you know the patient, you don't need the chart. So you'd be up all night and you'd be the intern. And the next morning at morning report, he would take the charts and you were expected to memorize everything and present the case. And again, there's a hierarchy in medicine. The lowest is the intern, then the resident, then the fellow, then the attending. And the lowest person usually presents the case. So none of the other doctors could do it. They'd kind of cheat and say, well, the labs are all normal except for this and this, but I memorized all of them. And because of his letter of reference, I got to do a pulmonary fellowship at Mass General Harvard. So I get there the first day, it's 1978, July 1st, and there's 8 patients on the pulmonary service throughout the hospital. And thinking I'm supposed to memorize this, I get there 2 hours beforehand and memorize everything on these 8 patients. And these are not just people who just got admitted. They're there for days. It's a big chart, which is an amazing memory. And then I meet the attending, Dr. Hales, and I walk over to the chart rack and hand him the chart. And he looks at me like I'm crazy and says, look, I'm the attending, I'm your superior. You're supposed to be presenting the case to me, not the other way around. And then I told him what Dr. Lyons said, and he knew Dr. Lyons. And I said, look, this will save you time. You can go through the chart while I present and then write your note now instead of coming back and writing notes. It'll save you a lot of time. So we do that, and then I hand the chart for the next one, and he said, you know this too? I said, yeah, I know all of them. That's what I thought I was supposed to do. Now, here's the purpose of the story. We finally get to the intensive care unit. Now, I had been there about an hour or so beforehand, and there's a shift change, so there's a different nurse. And it's a complicated patient. The patient's on the ventilator. Every hour, there's ventilator settings with vital signs that are recorded. There's tubes coming out of every orifice. And Dr. Hales is on my right, and I'm looking straight ahead, and I'm presenting the case from memory. And as I'm presenting, I see the back of this nurse's head and it's long blonde hair. So I'm tracing the long blonde hair, okay? And the next thing is, okay, the width of her shoulders isn't wide. She's not fat, all right? And then she turns around and I see her face. And I stop and I say to myself, oh my God, this is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life. What is this doing here, okay, in the middle of all this? And I hear Dr. Hales in my ear. This is as if it happened yesterday. This is July 1st, 1978. He says, look, you want to tell me how this patient got on the ventilator? You know, we're pulmonary. That's what we're here for. Basically, we're not here to gawk at women. He didn't say that part. And then the next thought was, pulmonary, who cares about pulmonary? Look at this woman. So I was intrigued, and I'm shy, okay? I'm not a ladies' man. I'm the opposite. So it took me a while, and she lived near the hospital on Pinckney Street, and I lived 5 or 6 blocks away. And when you're in a hospital and you're working in the ICU, you have gloves on. And if you have a ring as a nurse, you'll probably take it off. So I would wait till she left the hospital or she was going into the hospital and basically stalk her for a couple of weeks to make sure there was no wedding ring or engagement ring.
Yeah,
I mean,
just
I'm shocked.
scoping it out a little bit.
Well, what's the purpose of asking somebody for a date to get shot down?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm very shocked. So eventually I asked her, would you like to have dinner? And she says yes. So we're at a nice restaurant in Boston having dinner. It's normal. Things are normal. And in walks Dr. Miller, who was a young attending in the same department in pulmonary that I was. And he sees us and we say hi. And the next day he walks over to me and he says, how'd you get her to go out with you? And I said, I didn't kidnap her. It was kind of the usual way. I asked her, would you like to have dinner? And she said yes. He fancied himself as a ladies' man. I thought I was much better looking than he was, by the way, but whatever. I'm biased. And then he says to me, look, I've been asking her out for weeks and she keeps turning me down because she's engaged. Didn't you see that huge rock on her hand? She's engaged to this cardiology fellow. And I looked and I never saw it. Again, I never believed in God then. And clearly, even though I didn't believe in it, he was helping me. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the next question is, this is a very religious Catholic woman, okay, who graduated from Catholic High, goes to Mass every Sunday, goes to Mass every holy day. And how is she engaged to where is it in the Bible where it says you're engaged to somebody, but you go out with another guy? How does that work?
Right.
That doesn't make any sense at all. And I was very happy that we're going very slowly in all these departments because I had no experience with women. The only experience I had was I kissed a woman when I was a senior in college once, actually twice, same woman. And it was disgusting because she was a smoker and I felt like I was licking an ashtray. And I did it a second time too. I was like, what the hell's wrong with you? And then I graduated and I went to medical school and she went to California and became famous. I knew she was smart. She was really famous. Her name was Lottie Golden. And I didn't recall her name until, 54 years it was forgotten. And then I was at a dinner and somebody mentioned something and suddenly the name came back. That's kind of like what this memory is like. So anyway, we're going out, and I'm very happy that we're not having sex or anything because I have no experience with that, and I figured I'll screw this up too, and that will be the next part of this. At least let her get to know me a little bit. And so finally, years later, it's the end of 1981. Okay, we met in 1978. I asked her to marry me, and she says, "Well, I'll marry you, but only if you get baptized." And, I said, I don't believe in God, so how's that going to work? And she said, well, we baptize infants. Nobody's going to ask anything. So I remember standing there saying to myself, okay, somebody throw some water on my head. I don't believe in this nonsense, but I get to marry the woman of my dreams. It's the deal of the century. So I got baptized November 4th, 1981. We got married in January 1982. But there really wasn't time for a big honeymoon. So we planned this 6-week tour on a Eurail pass through Western Europe. And that's where the book begins. The only thing in the book, she's not there in the beginning, but clearly she's there. And, we're on this trip and we're going to see this castle in Neuschwanstein in Germany. And Germany's gorgeous. And suddenly the whole world is beautiful. Her smile lights up the room. She's a saint. She's athletic. She's brilliant. She's a phenomenal personality. She's like the perfect human being in every way. And by the way, you think that it would be nice, great being married to a saint? It's not. Okay, it's annoying, okay? Because every day I see how she manages and goes through the world, and it's like a slap in my face because I say, I can't do what she just did. I can't do that. And again, nobody ever accused me of being charming. Okay, and so that's a disadvantage, but whatever. So we're on this bus to see Neuschwanstein, which is this beautiful castle built by Ludwig II in the 1800s. It's gorgeous. And it's the same castle that Walt Disney used as a model for all his castles in his movies and TV shows. It's gorgeous.
Interesting.
If you go to my website, http://pauljoelbook.com/, you'll see a picture of it. There's also excerpts in the book, and you can learn about the book just, to see if you were interested in buying it. Anyway, so the bus stops in the middle of nowhere at a coffee shop that obviously paid the bus company to stop there. And everyone, including my wife, gets off to go in the coffee shop, but I didn't feel like eating or drinking or using the men's room. And across the street is this church. And, I didn't believe in God, but I'm 33 years old. But sometimes they're nice to look at, and I had nothing else to do. And I didn't know the story of this church. It's called Tears Church, or in German, Wieskirche. And the reason for that is there was a stick figure of Jesus being scourged that they used to use in the Good Friday procession, but everyone agreed it was ugly. So they tossed it in the barn, threw it away. And a couple of decades later, somebody realized there were actual tears from the eyes of Jesus in this thing, coming out. So they built this church and put this ugly thing on the altar. And I walk in there, and it's a Catholic church. There's Stations of the Cross in the walls, and the walls and the ceilings are gorgeous. There's nobody else in the church. And I'm sitting in the front row, and I'm looking at this ugly thing because your eye is drawn to it. It's so out of place. And suddenly I get this message. I love you. Your sins are forgiven. And suddenly, like a little bit like St. Paul on the road to Damascus, I believed in God. And I'm all thrilled. And it wasn't like I heard a voice. It's kind of like you listen to my voice right now, and then your brain interprets what I say. Mm-hmm. And the nerves in your brain and your spinal canal, they travel at the speed of electricity. So immediately you interpret this from your ears to your brain, whatever it is. This was like a direct message into my brain. I didn't hear anything. It was like right there.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled. I'm excited. I tell my wife about it. There's actually a God. And to top it all off, he's actually communicating with me. Like, who am I in this world? I'm nothing. And so our plan was to check out of this very inexpensive hotel near the train station in Munich. By the way, Munich is the place where the Nazi Party was founded. My birthday is April 20th, which is the same birthday as Adolf Hitler.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay, wait, and it gets better. In the Jewish calendar, my birthday is the last day of Passover, when actually the angel of death passed over and killed the firstborn males of the Egyptians and spared them. That's where the holiday gets its name, okay? I'm born on that day, okay, at 2 a.m. And again, when you looked at my birth certificate for the first 5, 6, 7 years of life, okay, my parents were so clueless, they couldn't figure it out in 9 months. Find a name for a male and find a name for a female. It's going to be one of those two, okay? Figure it out, okay? Instead, on my birth certificate, it just said baby boy with my last name. That was it. Okay, that's my official birth until it was changed, like when I was 7 or 8 years old.
Wow.
And again, so I'm born on the Last Supper. Jesus and his disciples were celebrating Passover. That's the day I was born. Okay, and again, I'm a firstborn male, so I would have been one of the people, dying if I was an Egyptian or whatever. Anyway, so we're on this. I walk into this church and I get converted, and so now we're back at the hotel, and our plan was to take a train to Vienna that night and spend the night on the train so that I don't have to pay for a hotel room. And we're checking out with our backpacks and our sneakers and jeans, and I said to my wife, "Hey, let's celebrate. We can get a next train. Okay, we have a Europass. Not like we have a ticket to a specific train." So I asked the clerk there, what's one of the nicest places to eat here in Munich? And he said, well, probably the restaurant at the Four Seasons Hotel. So I said to my wife, let's go there. We'll take another train. And then he says, you can't get in there. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, it's Friday night. Apparently October 15th, 1982 is a Friday. And it's a small restaurant. You need a reservation. And also, you need a suit and she needs a gown. Okay, you can't get in there jeans. He didn't say sneakers. He said running shoes and backpacks. And I remember thinking to myself, hey, the creator of the universe just communicated with me. He'll take care of this, okay? So
Right.
we're running over to the hotel, and we get there, and there's a doorman dressed to the nines, the top hat. And I ask him where the restaurant is, and he says, up the pass on the second floor. And He says to us, look, let me take your backpacks from you. I'll give them to you on your way out. Like, basically, we don't allow people dressed like you with backpacks in our lobby, let alone eat here. So I go upstairs, and the maitre d' is in a tuxedo. The piano player is in a tuxedo. All the waiters are in tuxedos. The guests all have gowns and suits on. So he asks me my name. So I tell him my name, and there's one empty table with a reserve sign on. And my wife said she saw on the reserve sign it had our last name on it, but I didn't see that. So we eat there and have like the meal of the century, and the piano player is playing a song. And I asked the waiter if he knew the song. He said, yeah, it's a famous song. It's called A Man Like You and Me by Michelle Jarre. And of course, the book title is A Man Like You and Me, A Supernatural Adventure Story. And I wrote down the beginnings of the lyrics to that song, and I'm going to read it now. If a man is rich and powerful, if a man is a king, it does not matter. He's still a slave to his fate. We're all slaves, whether king or beggar. We're all equal in this world. And again, the book is really about the interplay between fate, you're given a hand, and free will. So, as fate would have it, I'm attracted to blondes. Okay, blonde is wholesome in my life. So, of course, I marry a blonde. But the point is, it's not like you're going to sit there and God's going to throw everything in your lap. You have to have some choice. You have to ask her out. You have to court her. You have to be a human being. You have to, do what you have to live.
Right.
It's not like a passive life. And so that's part of the book. And again, for anybody who's interested, I hope they buy the book, but I hope also that even if they don't believe in God, if they believe in God and they buy the book, great. Okay, the purpose of the book is to increase faith in God, okay, in the reader. But especially if you have a friend who's an atheist, please buy the book and hand it to the friend. Because if you read the book, it's an adventure story. There's all the supernatural events that happen. And then there's also a listing of, okay, this happened. If you went to church that day, this is the mass reading you would hear. And so there's about 35 readings of the gospel. You'd end up reading a good chunk of the Bible, okay? And for an atheist, he's probably not reading the Bible on his, on the weekends. He's certainly not going to church.
Right.
Okay, so it would be a good introduction for those people. And I'd like to have some other people have the experience that I had. Suddenly you believe in God. Okay, so, it's earth shattering. Okay, it's like the whole, and again, I always questioned whether I was crazy or the world was crazy or both of us were crazy. Because here I am growing up during the Cold War, and so we had Stalin, and now we have Khrushchev, who's supposedly the improvement. He's better than this mass murderer Stalin. Okay, and I'm growing up, and I see him in the UN take his shoe off and bang his shoe on the table. And I'm saying to myself, did you ever see a leader of a country do that? Like, guy's crazy. And then, of course, we have elected this wonderful president, John F. Kennedy. And between the two of them, Khrushchev and Kennedy, we have the Cuban Missile Crisis. And I'm growing up with this, and I'm saying to myself, does this make any sense? We're holding our breath that a nuclear war is going to start over this nonsense. And there's an embargo on it. And if the Russians try to break the embargo, there's going to be a war. And here's the ridiculousness of it. Okay, so you don't like nuclear weapons this close to Florida. Okay, I get that. I understand that. But we have weapons in Europe right next to Russia, like the same distance, and that's okay. Right? Where's the logic in all of this, okay? And for like a week, everyone's holding their breath. It's going to blow up the place. That was kind of the way I grew up. And again, I didn't have much attention from my parents. It was amazing to me that I didn't grow up to be some kind of mass murderer.
I just want to kind of summarize, because 1978, you met this unbelievable woman, and unbeknownst to you, she put you on this path to God. And 1982, you guys got married, and there's a lot that probably went on, but that seems to be the genesis of the book, is from 1982 forward. But then in 2019, I really want to touch on this because I think this is really important for people to hear.
Right.
Is in 2019, there were some events that led up to your miracle that happened in 2022. Do you mind going into that a little bit?
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm the physician depicted in the book, okay? And on March 25th, 2019, which is the feast day of the Annunciation, the first joyous mystery of the rosary that I say every day, I'm driving to work to see patients in the office, and I never got there. Suddenly, I don't know how to drive the car. I'm confused. I don't know how to use a cell phone, so I stop the car. Fortunately, a policeman comes over, and I still remembered my home phone number. So he called my wife, and I recognized my wife. But about 95% of my memory was suddenly wiped away. And I also had this horrendous peripheral neuropathy. So my feet were numb, my balance was off, my fingers didn't work, and I couldn't walk without a cane. And I'm in the hospital, and the disease is a very rare disease, Hashimoto's encephalitis. And I knew about the term Hashimoto's because when I studied for the internal medicine boards in 1977 and passed the first time, a lot of it is about unusual presentations of common diseases. So thyroid disease is very common, but Hashimoto's thyroiditis is rare, okay? And the way you make the diagnosis is the thyroid is inflamed, so the thyroid function studies, T3, T4, TSH, are all abnormal. But there are these two tests that are positive, antithyroid globulin and antithyroid peroxidase. So I come in with this, the MRI in my brain lit up like a Christmas tree and all this inflammation, and my memory is wiped out. And the only thing I remember about this admission was they did a spinal tap, and we're thinking, okay, that didn't hurt much at all. They numbed it up pretty good. And I recognized my wife, and I thought I didn't recognize my adult sons when they came to visit, like for a week or so. But they said, no, Dad, you recognized us. You just didn't remember that you saw us the day before. So each time they came, it was like the first time that I saw them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a weird memory. And anyway, so I'm treated with chemotherapy and steroids, and I'm seizing anti-seizure medicines. And get this, the chemotherapy that they used was this drug called Cellset. Cellset is FDA approved if you have a liver transplant or a kidney transplant to suppress your immune system so you don't reject this foreign organ. Right. But the only FDA approved dose of Cellset is 500 milligrams twice a day. And instead, I get treated with 1,500 milligrams twice a day, so 3 times the maximum dose of this. And my immune system is wiped out, so that great immune system that I had is gone. And the great memory that I never appreciated was special, by the way, that's gone too. And I'm a moron. And my wife is stuck with this moron. And I have trouble doing anything. Okay, I have trouble sweeping the floor. I got to focus like I'm playing football. Like my life depends on catching the football to do any kind of menial thing. I got to hold on for dear life walking down the stairs. I got to hold on for dear life and calculate how am I going to take a shower, what body part am I going to wash, and what am I going to hold on to so I don't kill myself in the shower. And just, a couple of months ago, I fell down a flight of stairs at home and broke my wrist. Okay.
Oh, no.
Yeah, right. So anyway, so this is going on, and eventually I called a priest that I knew and said, look, I don't want to go to hell for committing suicide, but is it okay if I just stop eating and drinking and let nature take its course? Because every day for me is horrific suffering. And also, my wife could marry somebody else. She can't marry anybody. We're Catholic if I'm alive. It's a win-win for both of us. And the priest said, go ahead, God will understand. And that's what I was planning on doing until this Dr. Cheryl Fry, who read the book and who's been the person who saved my life and most instrumental in helping me, said, well, if you really think you're the person in the book tasked by God to get the Pope in unison with the bishops to consecrate Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, as requested by Our Lady of Fatima in 1917, and you decide to say, take a hike to God, you're certainly going to go to hell. Okay, it's like God tells Noah to build the ark. It's not going to go well for Noah if he says, look, I'm busy, God, take a hike, find somebody else.
Right.
And that's the only reason. That's the only reason I'm still alive. Okay, because when I told her, like, she went ballistic, and I like her personality also because I grew up in Brooklyn where it's like straight talk. There's no sugarcoating it, and she does the same. She grew up in Dorchester, so I grew up in Brooklyn looking at the wonderful things of Manhattan. Okay, and she grew up in Dorchester looking at the wonderful things in Boston. Okay, and she also taught at Harvard also. She's brilliant. So anyway, I'm alive because of Dr. Cheryl Fry and because she read the book, but I'm still a moron, okay? So after 2 years of this chemotherapy and steroids and anti-seizure medicines, nothing changed. The MRI still showed destruction of my right hippocampus and right temporal lobe and other parts, and I'm left-handed, so the right side of my brain is the dominant part. And nothing changed, so treatment was stopped. And a year later, on April 29, 2022, miraculously and suddenly, my memory came back. The peripheral neuropathy is also a little bit better, by the way, okay? And I realized that because normally I take a shower and I wash my hair, so I hold on with one hand and the other hand I wash my hair, and then suddenly I'm standing there washing my hair with both hands and saying, hey, the balance is a little bit better. And the thing about this is that the nerve cells in your brain and your peripheral nervous system, they don't multiply. They never get replaced, okay? And if you see somebody, let's say, who has a stroke, unfortunately, you'll see that they may improve the first couple of days because they also have cerebral edema. As the edema gets better, they may have some improvement in the first couple of days. But after you can't move your arm and your leg, and it's a week or so later, that's it. And the rehab is learning how to walk with a hand and a leg that you can't move. It doesn't come back.
Right.
Okay? It's not suddenly you see somebody who can't move their arm and leg for a month because of the stroke, and now suddenly they're walking and talking and doing everything like perfectly normally. No, that doesn't happen. Okay?
Once the cells are damaged, they're damaged. There's no going back.
They're damaged, and they die. And not only that, they don't replicate. The nervous system does not replicate.
Right.
Not like the cells of your skin. So anyway, this is like totally a miracle that I can have a conversation with you and have a normal memory. I can tell you about things that happened when I was 1.5 years old or 3 years old, or what happened yesterday. And the weird part is everything from April 29, 2022, as it happens, it's like the old memory. I can tell you what was said, what was done, I went to this restaurant, this is what we had, 4 years ago or 3 years ago, whatever the heck it is, okay? I can tell you everything my wife ever said to me. The problem is I'm continuously having to look up stuff that was still wiped out before that date.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, for instance, again, something told me something about chess, and suddenly I realized, hey, I was on the chess team in high school, and I know how to play chess. And so that came back, and now I know how to play chess. I know the moves, and I know the Nimzo Indian defense that I used to use in black, and the Queen's Gambit, and everything. Like suddenly it's there. So it's kind of like a weird thing. But anything from April 29th, 2022 forward, it's like the old brain. And again, we're talking about when I met my wife, which is 1978. It's like it happened yesterday, okay? Or I'm seeing the pediatric neurologist at age 3. The memory is as if it happened yesterday. Like it's perfect.
Wow.
When I tell you this is exactly what he said, those are the words that he said then. No, he's not retarded. He's aware of his environment. He'll learn to talk. He's just slow. He's very slow. Like basically, he's dumb as a box of rocks, but he's not retarded. Okay, this is the sentence that he used. Okay, I'm not making up.
Yeah. So basically, the recovery that you experience is beyond medicine's ability to explain.
Exactly. And the other thing that's also unexplainable is there is no specific part of your brain for remembering medical information, and that seems to have stayed. I still work. I review cases. I haven't driven a car since March 25th, 2019. I'm afraid because my feet are numb and my fingers don't work. I'll kill somebody on the road unless I have another miracle. My wife has to take me everywhere, and I missed, by the way, the little things. Like again, I never appreciated this memory, but then when I look back, hey, this is very special. I'll give you an example. So I had a practice in Delmar, New York, and it's a typical practice. You have a chart, the patient comes in, blah, 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 blah. But I also used to do the shopping, okay? I would drive the car and do the market shopping. And I had like 5,000 or 6,000 patients that I would see like every 3 or 4 months. And then I'd have some other ones that would come every once in a while, whatever. So I'd meet one of the patients in the market, Mrs. Jones or Mr. Smith, and I'd say, hello, Mr. Jones, or hello, Mrs. Smith, and their face would light up. Because I'm in the market, I don't have the chart in my hand, and the doctor remembers, in this impersonal world, the doctor remembers your name. So their face would light up, like, wow, okay? And then with this memory that I had, I'd say, are you remembering to take your medicines? Then I'd list off the medicines and doses that they were taking, okay? And their mouth would drop. I'd say, who the heck remembers? Because I don't have the chart in my hand. This is not like we're in the office. So it was a very special memory, ability to memorize things. And again, I remember also I was taking pediatrics in medical school. And we had this terrific teacher, Dr. Rook. And every Friday he would give one of these short answer tests on this Picayune stuff on 100 pages of Nelson's textbook of pediatrics. Every week I'm supposed to memorize 100 pages of this pediatrics text, okay? And I could do that, okay, no problem. And I got very good grades on all those things, okay? And towards the end of the, I'm saying, okay, I've now done 1,200 pages of this textbook, or 1,000 pages of textbook, and I was worried, is there space in this brain to memorize another 100 pages? I don't need what I just memorized 2 weeks beforehand, okay? That's not going to be on this test. So I actually was worried that there's not enough room here to put all this stuff in my brain, but there was never any problem with the capacity. But, still, it's like an amazing memory that I never appreciated till I got sick with this Hashimoto's encephalitis, and I got this miracle and I got better. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I said, wow, that was, I never appreciate, I appreciated the immune system that I inherited from my father. That I knew. And again, I'm an intern at Kings County Hospital. It's in the middle of the night. There's no air conditioning. I'm sick. I got 103 fever. And I'm drawing blood on one of these patients. And he looks up at me, and I'm sweating a bit. And he says, "Doc, you don't look so good." And I said, "Look, let's concentrate on you. You're the patient here. I'm going to be fine." But, So the next day I'm on rounds. I look like a rose. I'm only sick for an hour anyway. So after I'm talking to him, and he's complaining to me, and he says that I'm not fair because I took the good medicine, and I'm better, and he's still sick. Okay. And like, how do you explain to him that, I didn't take any medicine. Okay. That's just the way it goes. You're sick. And the other thing that was wonderful about it was that there's no masks there. There's 3 60-bed wards of patients with COPD, emphysema, and mostly drug-resistant TB. Okay. TB was rampant then. And so you'd have to have a patient, depending on what they had on their x-ray, 2 drugs for 2 years or 3 drugs for 2 years, whatever it is. And these were patients who were alcoholics, and they'd stay there. And if they left the ward, they'd be hunted down by the police because they're going to be giving TB, drug-resistant TB, to everyone on the subway. They're there on the bus. Okay, so there's no masks. You couldn't really function if you thought you're going to catch this stuff. Okay, I'm walking around, and then to top it all off, I had TB. In junior high school, they had a whole program because TB was rampant in New York City. So everyone had a skin test for TB, a PPD, and mine was positive. So I'm, a terrified kid worrying I'm going to die of TB, okay? So the next step is they do a chest x-ray. And again, if the chest x-ray is normal, you're supposed to get a year of INH if you're under the age of 35. And clearly I was under the age of 35 in junior high school. Okay? Mm-hmm. But they lost me to follow-up, and so I was never treated. And then when I finally got to medical school and I learned about this, and I should have had a year of INH, and I said, well, I got this great immune system, and it's probably killed everything, and my x-ray is normal. It's always been normal, and, I'm not going to take a year of INH. But then when I got this Hashimoto's encephalitis, I said, this is going to be just great, because most of the time, TB is not a primary infection. The scenario is that you get the infection, it gets walled off for years, and then it gets activated, and that's when you get the cough and the productive cough and coughing up blood and losing weight and everything else. You get the active symptoms then. Mm-hmm. And here I am. I'm on this chemotherapy, and get this. The thing is going to reactivate, and I'm going to give it to my wife. Okay, that will be the upshot of all this. I'm going to start coughing. She'll get TB for me. Okay, and so I'm worried about it. But then, I had a quantiferin gold TB test. The PPD test, if there's any organism, whether they're dead or alive in your body. This test to see if there's any living TB organisms in your body. And mine was negative. So I was correct. The immune system killed every last bug in my body, every last TB
That's amazing.
Organism in my body. Okay. And, the fact that I didn't have the year of INH, so you don't need it. Okay. This immune system kills everything. It was a gift from God. Okay. Like, a God that I never believed in. So I had that all my life.
Yeah. We're running up on time. I want to make sure that we have enough time to give you a few minutes to talk about your book. Anything important you want to tell us without giving anything away?
The book is a true story, basically. And it starts off with our trip in October 1982. And we're in Germany, of all places. And Germany is gorgeous. I went to Europe once before I was married. And my trip to Germany was seeing Dachau concentration camp. That was the first concentration camp, not necessarily for Jews. It was for anybody who Hitler thought was a threat. And that was my visit to Germany. I left within 24 hours. I wanted to see one concentration camp, and that was it. But now I'm with Mary Beth, and the whole world is different. Germany is gorgeous, okay? And again, the book is really about the interplay between free will and fate. You have a certain fate, but you also have to use your free will. So
I like that.
My fate was, in a way, well, I had this great memory, but I didn't appreciate it. I had this great immune system was taken away. I had this bad experience with the teachers with dark hair, and suddenly the one who was blonde was suddenly, everything was great. And in my brain, blonde is wholesome, blonde is good. So, of course, I meet my wife, who's blonde. That's it kind of fits with that, and that's part of the story.
That's great. That's great. Well, Paul, it has been a privilege to talk with you, to hear about your life, your miracle, your book. I'm so grateful that you took the time to come on the show. Like I said at the beginning, time is the one thing we can never get back. We can't earn more of it. It's the most precious thing we have. So I want to let you know I really appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you for having me. You made it fun. Okay.
Oh, good.
So this is not something I do every day, and you made it a lot of fun. So thank you for having me.
That's great.
And hopefully some of your listeners will buy the book. And again, if they have a friend who's an atheist, buy the book for them. Okay, maybe it'll change their life. They'll have this light the same way that I had on October 15th, 1982.
You never know what's going to inspire people. Thank you all for listening. Be sure to check out the links in the show notes. Paul's book is on there, pauljoelbook.com. He has an amazing story, and I'm sure you will enjoy it. Take a moment to like and subscribe or follow the show on your favorite podcast app. Check out me in the show notes. I've got my links in there as well. If you are enjoying the show, consider supporting me at myministrymission.com/support. You don't have to give me money. Just share it with people. There's ideas on there. Until next time, be sure to read your Bibles, love your neighbor, and may the Lord bless you and keep you. So God bless everyone, and God bless you, Paul.
God bless you too. Take care. Thank you very much for having me as a guest.
Thank you again for listening to the My Ministry Mission podcast. Please like and subscribe it on your favorite app. Remember to check the show notes for great links, and we'll see you next time.